questions that you have and what it means to be a college partner with UC Online. So I'm going to introduce Mel Woods, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself.
Well, that's a good way to start, isn't it? Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. My name is Mel Woods. I'm a program manager with the University of Cincinnati's Medical Laboratory Science program. I've been at the university for since 2010. I always like to start by telling people that I began my career in this profession much like you. I started as an MLT, and I did that a long time ago in Florida. And when I wanted to go back to school about 3 years into working in the lab, I loved working in the laboratory, but I realized that for the types of things that I wanted to do, I was going to need to get my bachelor's degree. And so back then, when I started looking around at schools, there were no programs that did anything like what we're doing, where you could take your MLT credits and apply them to finish a bachelor's degree in your field. I could have cobbled together something with a liberal arts degree, but it wouldn't have qualified me to sit for my board certification at the MLS level. So I just ended up, and certainly there weren't online programs. So I just went on and did something else, which ultimately landed me in higher ed. And I'm glad I did, because I enjoy working for UC and working with students. But you're really lucky that there are options for you now in terms of AS to BS completer programs, and ours will certainly well qualify you to become an MLS. So stick around. We'll tell you about our program, and thanks again for joining us today.
And then I'm Christy Stewart. I'm one of the enrollment services advisors for our Bachelor's of Medical Laboratory Science program. Myself, and 6 others, we help you through the application process. We answer any questions that you have about the program, and just make sure that you have that like one-on-one personal attention so that you can complete your application. And then I'll introduce you to Erin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Rumpke, and I'm the program director for our online program. I myself originally came to medical lab science through having a bachelor's degree in microbiology and a minor during that degree process in information systems. So when I got into the lab, I thought that, this is for me. Definitely wanted to work in microbiology, and then quickly realized that no one would hire me because I did not have an ASCP certification. So then I came to UC's program in like 2002 and actually completed what's called a certificate program, where they allow you just to do the clinical year in your MLS classes and get a certificate so you can sit. So since then, I've, worked a lot of places around the city here in Cincinnati at UC Health, Children's, Tri-Health System, and then have been teaching for a number of years with the program since like 2005. Did my graduate work over at the College of Medicine, and, came here to UC because I decided I wanted to teach full time in 2015. And since then, have kind of kept my skills up working PRN around the city, and, have ultimately moved into the after a long relationship with this program, moved into the role of being the program director. So I'm glad everybody's here today, and we're here to answer all your questions and just give you a little bit of information about our program. If you have specific questions, you're welcome to kind of drop them in the chat. And then, of course, we'll take questions at the end as well. Okay, so just a little bit about our program in general. Most of you sitting here are actually, if you're a student, you're enrolled in a NACLS accredited program as an MLT. Our MLS program is also NACLS accredited. So this is obviously a marker of quality for medical lab science programs. And our graduates, for that reason, to become an accredited program, just to explain a little bit to you what that's about. I know you talk about accreditation in your classes, but it does mean that, you are evaluated by NACLS to ensure that you're teaching all of the required elements to prepare you for entry-level practice to be a competent medical laboratory scientist. So as part of that, all of our graduates are well prepared for, clinical practice when they graduate, but also for passing, the certification exam. So as you compare programs, if you're, looking at several different programs and you're wondering, like, how do I make this decision? There'll be a number of things to think about, but those are two really markers of quality that, I always tell students anytime they're looking at programs and comparing. You always want to make sure that you're looking at NACLS accredited programs, whether it's ours or someone else's, and also those program outcomes when we consider, how well graduates are performing, after they graduate, either on the ASCP exam for certified to become a certified medical lab scientist, and graduation outcomes, and whether those students are getting jobs. So those are actually we're required to report those and post them front and center on our website for anybody who is curious and looking for programs. So, go ahead and you can visit. I see that Mel dropped a link in the chat to our outcomes, but, programs that you're considering should be pretty transparent about that with you, because it's required of their accreditation that they do that. So our curriculum is relevant curriculum. For those of you who are MLTs and you are going to be working, and I don't know how many of you on here are already working in a lab, but if you have done that, the difference between like having some experience in the lab and then going to class and applying that. I know a lot of you, your programs are you do concurrent classes with your clinical rotations. It really makes a difference on, how you understand the concepts that are being not only taught to you, but also the types of questions that come up for you when you're sitting in class, because you do have some experience relevant to the topic you're discussing. So our students, who are MLT students that do transfer to us to finish their MLS degree, is probably my favorite thing about this program, is that those students do come in. The average age of the students in our program is 37 years of age. But we have students who are new grads who are transitioning in from MLT programs. And we have, an average. You've taken stats, or you will if you haven't yet. An average is an average, right? It's a mean. So then we have students who have 30 years of experience in the clinical lab who've decided to, continue their education. So what you're getting within your classes when you interact and you collaborate with students is really, a vast array of different medical lab scientists with different levels of knowledge and different specialties. And, all of that really comes together to make not only what we're teaching relevant for you, because, we're teaching what we need to be teaching, but also the conversations that come up in those courses and what you can learn from each other. Really kind of amazing. It's my favorite thing. So, earnings and career opportunities. If you are all in the lab, you know that there's a shortage. That's not a mystery for anyone. And if you're a program director on the call, you're probably experiencing the same thing I am, where people are reaching out to you to try to hire your students before they're even graduated. We get a lot of those calls because everybody's short. So the earnings, COVID actually did quite a service for our profession, in my opinion, in bringing to light a lot of not only, things that we do as part of our roles, but also bringing to light, the critical shortage that there is of medical lab scientists in this country. So, we've seen salaries raise for individuals, and we've seen a demand for quality for individuals increase. So the career outlook is good for our profession. Okay, and a little bit about for our articulation students. So I just want to tell, students on the call what an articulation agreement is between, in universities. And really what it is it means that we've gotten together with kind of like our advising department and the advising department and the program administration at your school. And we've looked at your curriculum and we looked at our curriculum and we have said, you know, this is the plan for transition for your students coming into our university. And it guarantees really that, you know, students who come from your university can transfer smoothly into ours. And what that looks like transferring with an articulation agreement is that your credits are guaranteed to transfer. And you'll come in here, you know, with a junior level status and go right into your MLS courses. Some of the programs that, you know, you might look at, ours is a 60 credit hour program. It's like essentially like the last 2 years of your bachelor's degree. We don't ask that you take any other gen ed courses because as part of that articulation transfer, you know, we have a model with the university where, you know, they're okay with accepting what you've taken thus far as your general education requirements so that you can roll directly into your medical lab science classes. So you won't need to take any additional courses like a psychology course or an English course or, you know, some social science that's not really relevant to your practice before you come into our program. So it's really kind of a peace of mind knowing that, you know, this is your plan for finishing out your bachelor's degree after your MLT program. So you can thank your administrators for, you know, looking out for you and, you know, trying to make a plan for you to transfer. Okay. So that's just what I said before. So that block credit transfer, you'll come in and transfer your credits in, and then you'll just need the 60 additional credits for your MLS courses. One question that comes up for folks a lot is they say, you know, they might say like, oh, well, I've already had a hematology class. Can I, you know, take out one of, you know, can I maybe get credit for a hematology class or something like that? Really, everybody in our program is entering in as an MLT. So we take that into account when we are writing the curriculum for the program. So while we may do some basic review of basic hematology concepts, just to say, I mean, you know, if you haven't had a class in like 2 years, you forget some of these things, especially if you're not working in the department. But for the most part, we are writing the curriculum and teaching the class with the assumption that there is the base knowledge that you gained in your MLT program. So it would be, you know, while some things might be a review of what you've recovered in your MLT, a lot of it's going to be, most of it's going to be like higher level content because there is actually different learning objectives that for entry level practice for medical lab scientists than there are for MLTs. Some are the same, but there's also a bit that are different. So, you know, that's just, you know, in case you were curious about that. So the hematology sequence that we're teaching is building on your MLT curriculum. It's not equivalent to your MLT curriculum. The classes that we teach are 100% online. Can you go back to the earlier slide, please? Thank you. So the credits that we teach, actually, the classes are 100% online and they are asynchronous. So what this means is that, and this is because we have students that work every shift imaginable, every arrangement of schedule that you could, you know, probably think of, we have a student that works it. So our classes are asynchronous. What this means is that you can dial in and take these classes, like dial in, that's like old, like internet terms. You can log on and, you know, listen to your lectures and complete your course assignments anytime that you would like. There are obviously due dates, like you have an assignment and it'll say that it's due on Wednesday, but there's no rule that says like you have to listen to your lectures on Monday at 5 p.m. or anything like that. So that's how our courses are run. An important thing though is that we do have individuals who hold office hours for these classes at several points almost every day of the week, you know, looking at different times of day. So there'll be some, we call these individuals facilitators. They are, you know, people that co-teach the class with our primary instructors. And really they, you know, are there to help and support students. So you'll be divided in your classes. You might have a class that has like, let's say 80 people in it or so, but you'll be divided into smaller learning groups in each of those learning groups will have not only the main course instructor, but also a facilitator to help you and be there for questions. And all of these facilitators in that course, who are these small group leaders, hold office hours during the week. So, and you're allowed to go to any of those office hours. So there might be 10 different office hour blocks scheduled, and those are live office hours where you can, talk to an actual human about a problem that you're having. So, and of course, you can always email too. So the degree, it does take a little over 2 years to complete. So it's actually 7 semesters, but they're part-time semesters. So you're registering anywhere from like 8 to 10 credits a semester, sometimes a little bit less than that, just based on, the course, the semester that you're in. And that's really because our students are working when they're in this program. All right, next slide, please. Okay, a little bit about the curriculum overview, like what types of classes will you be taking and what does that look like? Well, we do have regular didactic classes, and these are what you think of as your main subjects, like chemistry and hematology courses, microbiology courses, those types of classes. And the way that our curriculum is arranged is a little bit different than what you might be used to in your current program. So let's say normally in a semester, maybe you have 3 classes, and you might have 1 class Monday, Wednesday throughout the whole semester, 1 class, Tuesday, Thursday throughout the whole semester. And you're doing all of these classes for the full length of the semester. So our students generally take 3 courses a semester. However, they're block scheduled. So what that series might look like is if this semester we're doing hematology, and you're taking 3 different classes like hematology, advanced hematology, and hemostasis, it's going to look like the first 5 weeks we're doing hematology 1, or regular hematology. The second 5 weeks we might be doing advanced hematology. And then the last 5 weeks we might be doing hemostasis. So you're actually just, needing to keep track of the content and the deadlines and the due dates, and be in the mindset of 1 class at a time during the semester, which is nice if you're working. And it really is, it just is a nice cohesive schedule for students to track their way through the curriculum. So we do 1 main focus a semester generally. We have a chemistry semester, we have a microbiology semester, we have a hematology semester, and we have a blood bank semester. And before you take those 4 semesters, we start you off in a class that are a semester where your first class is going to be UA and body fluids. And that's because most people are familiar with that content, no matter what size lab you work in. Typically, you've worked in UA and body fluids. And then the next class you take is a immunology and molecular introduction course. And what that does is just make sure everybody is on the same page with immunology and serology concepts and testing, as well as basic molecular foundations and, basic knowledge of molecular testing. And that's because both immunology and molecular are so integrated into all of the other laboratory disciplines, specifically when we're starting to think about some more advanced testing, right? We're talking from an MLT to MLS. We have more molecular objectives where we're thinking about things like microbiology, hematology specifically, and even some blood bank now, right? So that's your first semester. And then after you get out of that first semester, we're going to do our 4 main didactic semesters I just explained. And then when we're done with those, during our 6th semester, we're going to do clinical practicum. And this is rotations, but and we do, for students who are working in the lab, we have a process that I'll talk a little bit about that's called life experience credit. So if you've been working full time, let's say in microbiology for a year, you can test out more or less of maybe that rotation if you're competent in that area already, and your supervisor will agree and sign off and validate that you are working at an MLS level at these various competencies. So I'll talk about that process in a little bit, but if not, we do have students to do clinical practicum. A lot of students do that at their place of employment. A lot of students who are new grads like to return back to wherever they went for their MLT rotations. And, it's a various different places that students decide that they'd like to complete those, but students identify a site that they'd like to do their rotation at, and then we work with them to help set that up. And then all bachelor's degrees have a capstone experience at the end. And because this is a bachelor's degree, we're not different. We have a capstone experience that's in the last semester, and that capstone is really a group project where you collaborate to do write like a journal style article. Typically, this is often a review style article. Maybe an article that discusses like cutting edge techniques for diagnostic techniques. But if you've ever read, a review style article or an informational article in a journal, it would be a similar structured article. And we have Gideon Labner, who's a professor here who has worked with students for many, many years to complete those capstone projects. So it's great. We have a lot of great papers that come out of that class. Okay, we could go to the next slide. Does anybody see? I'm going to check for questions real quick. No questions in there? Okay. So clinicals overview. UC does adhere to all NACLS requirements for clinical rotations. So NACLS does have a standard that students cannot be paid for clinical experiences. And UC needs to have all of these clinical documents on file. How we work with students to do that is we do have somebody whose full-time job here at the program. She's our clinical coordinator. Her name's Lane Bloom. And all Lane does is work with students to, get them into clinical rotations and get them started. So she's our clinical coordinator, and she actually works in conjunction with one of our faculty members, Dr. Adrienne Davis-Apfey, who is our clinical instructor, faculty member who actually teaches the class and interacts with the preceptors. So both Lane Bloom, our clinical coordinator, and Dr. Davis-Apfey work together to help students not only get everything that they need to get for, those rotations started before they need to happen, but also during the clinical rotation, working with preceptors to, collect the typical paperwork that you did when you were in your MLT rotations, and to ensure competency. So that's what that looks like for our students when they're here. When students do come into the program, typically during their second semester, Lane does reach out to them and will, ask them for the site that they'd like to complete that at. We do have a lot of clinical affiliates. We have a lot of students who complete rotations across the country. And for that reason, we do have clinical contracts already in place with many, many hospital systems. I think at the current time, we have almost 1,000 clinical affiliate contracts that are good and valid. So, once students can identify that, we work with them to see if we already have a contract in place. And if not, they can put us in touch with the individual we need to talk to get that in place. But that can take time, as any of the program directors on the call know. So, we do start to work with students during, we give them a semester to get settled. Then we start to work with them to, collect the paperwork that we need to ensure that it's an acceptable site, reach out to preceptors, talk about timing, all of those sorts of things. But when and where students complete their clinical rotation, by when I mean time of day, is really between the student and the preceptor. Our students, again, work all different hours, and we know and understand that a lot of students are, all of our clinical sites, if you are in a big city, are working with several different schools. So they may need to, have a creative schedule to get a clinical rotation done, coming in maybe after lunch for a few hours during the week, and spreading it out. So those, and students who are working full time, especially those who have kids and whatnot, other priorities, you can design it with your clinical preceptor and make a schedule, and you submit it to us, and we look at it and say, okay, this will work to get you the hours that you need. So it's flexible. You're not going to have to drown out all your PTO and, quit your job to complete clinical rotations. Okay. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thanks. Oh, I guess we can go to that one. I talked about that one already. Okay, so life experience credit for students who are currently working in the lab. I will say first, because all of you who are in MLT programs or teaching MLT students on this call, this is not this like clinical rotations for your MLT program will count for will count for credit hours when you transfer into the program, but they do not replace the clinical rotations at the MLS level for students. What life experience credit, so life experience credit isn't referring to, MLT rotations when we're talking about clinical experience. What we are talking about here is experience that students have in the lab. What we've done is taken, for example, the tasks that students need to complete in like blood bank or microbiology, and they may have, and we've divided them into 2 different modules because we know a lot of individuals are like doing some rapid testing in micro, doing setups, that specimen processing, and then doing some more advanced things like plate reading and, molecular testing. Those types of experiences are, living in a different section of microbiology. So students who are, for example, maybe working in micro, but not doing a bunch of advanced testing can get credit still for a portion of that rotation. And blood banks set up the same way, that students can get credit for a portion of that rotation. Perhaps they're doing type and screens, things like that, but they're not doing full antibody identification or perhaps like LUITs and more advanced tasks. So they can get credit for like the more basic tasks in blood bank as well. So we've divided those up to make sure that we're giving students the opportunity to get the most credit possible for their current work experience that they have. Hematology is, the basic hematology task list that, it's just one task list. And then chemistry is generally one task list for students too. So we don't offer partial module credit, but we do offer partial credit for micro and blood bank because we've split them up into 2 different modules, basic testing and advanced testing. So, and work experience, like how much work experience do students need? We generally say 1 year of experience is what students should aim for to be for competency. And, we do have an application. It's like an official process for life experience credit with the university. We have an Office of Prior Learning Assessment here at UC. We've been using this model for almost 20 years with them for this program, where students, we have an application and verification like documentation that clinical supervisors need to sign off on, and they submit that with a fee to the Office of Prior Learning Assessment. They review it, we review it. There's a little bit of follow-up if necessary with those preceptors, and then students will then be awarded advanced standing credit for their rotation. So that clinical rotation course is worth like 6 credit hours, and students and 1 credit hour for each of those modules that you see outlined here. And students actually get, instead of like taking that rotation, they get a credit, like an advanced standing credit, like you would post for a transfer course or something on their transcript. So they're not going to be short credit hours, but they are going to have a little more money in their pocket because instead of paying for a credit hour per course, they are going to just be paying the fee to the Prior Learning Assessment Office, which I believe is $60. Okay, what did I forget here? Oh, I think that's it. Oh, and our clinical coordinator, while students, I didn't mention this before, during like those semesters where they're preparing for clinicals, she holds office hours for students that are posted. So there's a time, that's identified every week where students can kind of drop in, and ask whatever questions come up for them. Okay. We can go to the next slide.
All right, so I will go over the UC Online student experience. Our students have help all the way from enrollment to graduation. All of our students are paired with a student success coordinator who helps you from enrolling for classes, getting the books you need, or helping you get the book list that you need. They do midterm and first week check-ins just to kind of see how things are coming along. They're your go-to person for any questions that you have from start to finish. All of our students have access to the University of Cincinnati resources. We have library resources, technical support, there's online learning management help, and there's a writing center, which is really good. If you have research papers that need to be reviewed, you can submit them and they help you with like grammar and spelling and stuff like that. And then we also have a national networking opportunity. So during your time at UC, you're going to interact with students and faculty from across the nation. And then the admissions requirements. So of course, you'll need your associate's degree in medical laboratory technician. They do want to see a minimum of a 2.5 GPA. You're going to want to submit your official transcripts from all the schools you've attended minus high school. You're going to upload proof of your MLT certification. So it can be ASCP, AAB, or AMT certification. You are going to need 2 reference forms, and one of those must be from a current lab supervisor. And then what you're just going to need is their name and email address. You're going to put that into the application form, and admissions actually sends them an email with a link so that they can download the form and they can upload it back to your application. And then we are currently waiving the $50 application fee for the summer start. Then I'm going to pass it over to Mel now.
So, return on investment. Again, Erin mentioned this earlier, that MLS jobs are projected to grow faster than average. The average wage right now currently for a medical laboratory scientist is $77,000 annually. Some of the job titles that our alum have gone on to do is, I would say first and foremost, students are looking to get the medical laboratory scientist credential. So that's what everyone will have when they finish up this program. But we do just list a few other things that seem to be the most popular that our alum have gone on to do, which is to go into management, supervisory management work, maybe even at the hospital administrative level, running medical organizations. Researcher, you can get into research and development, although, I like to point out that that is typically a different career route, but certainly going in with a bachelor as a medical laboratory scientist gives you a great foundation for maybe some of those entry level, even, basic researcher assistant type jobs. Typically in R&D, though, you would get a PhD in an area like molecular biology, chemistry, something like that. A technical specialist, LIS, like the laboratory information specialist. So, how we have information technology, whatever system is linking all of your analyzers together and reporting out, patient results and so forth. I mean, that's a whole specialty in and of itself. And usually, instead of just having somebody with an IT background, labs tend to prefer somebody with the MLS background because, they understand the data that the reports are generating. Occasionally, we do have students that go into pharmaceutical sales. That's another area that students have taken their knowledge into, sometimes even like with the companies that sell laboratory analyzers, they might get into that sort of sales and marketing area. And then we do have students that go on to become an educator. And to do that, typically you need a higher degree than the students that you're teaching, the program of the student you're teaching in. So we do have a master's program here at UC that has a track for people who would like to become an educator. And I think we might have a slide of that later.
And then this is our Be a Bearcat, Stay a Bearcat. So we have, of course, our bachelor's degree in the medical laboratory sciences, and then you can go on to get your master's in medical laboratory science leadership. So And one of the benefits from going from your bachelor's to your master's is that our UC students get a $1,500 one-time scholarship for their first semester. And there's no GPA requirement. There's no additional application needed. It just automatically happens when you complete your application and are accepted into the program. They see that you are a UC alum and they give you this benefit. Now, the next steps, you can visit online.uc.edu and begin your application. And then you'll be connected with an enrollment services advisor who will support you all the way through the progress of the application. And then if you are wanting to start classes for summer, the application deadline is March 15th. And then one thing they do suggest is maybe apply early so that you can secure that your transcripts make it on time and also, save your spot. And then we'll go on to any questions that we might have. I'm not able to see the chat, so if Erin and Mel, if you can read those, that would be great.
I didn't see any questions in the chat, but I did see some familiar names in the attendees, so that's fun. But does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? Anything at all?
You can unmute and just ask too if it's not
Yeah.
convenient to type in the chat. I mean, we have, you can just unmute yourself and ask.
If I was teaching, I would say, what questions do you have? Instead of do you have questions? Okay. I don't see anything coming up in the chat. We will hang on here for a little bit, just as if anybody has questions that they'd rather not, ask and have it recorded, or you can always reach out to me, directly to ask any questions. I would be glad to talk to you. Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Yes.